Timing wise, it was
It is.
watching.
Good evening. It's October 28th. It's about 6:44 p.m. And this is a Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Let's start by introducing ourselves. Ashley.
Ashley Pineda, GCSD Board of Education trustee and parent of 2.
David Warner, proud parent of a Woodlands High School graduate and Board of Education member. Katie.
Katie McGee, parent of a 7th grader.
Chris.
Chris Fallon, parent of 2 and a Board of Education trustee.
Jessica.
Hi, Jessica Muldoon, parent of a Leah Jackson student.
Michael.
Michael Falcone, I'm the Director of Facilities and Operations.
Dave.
David Law, parent of 2, ECP and LFJ.
Very good. Fred.
My name is Fred Seba with BBS Architects and Engineers.
Lisa.
Lisa Raymond, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Jim.
Jim Wadig, Project Architect and Manager for BBS Architects.
Tracy.
Sorry, Tracy Maris, President, GCSD Board of Education. I'm actually going to log off and go back on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you for your assistance. Carol.
Carol Allen, community member.
Laser.
Laser Alert, Network Administrator.
Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Lazari. Sorry, there's a lot going on at my house right now.
Okay. Fair enough. Anybody I missed?
That would be me. That would be me, David. Denise Alamo, parent of twins at Bailey, who are in the 4th grade, and recently elected treasurer for the PTA Council.
Welcome. I've done that job, but many, many years ago.
Oh, maybe I'll call you.
Everything has changed, believe me. Okay. It used to be a big binder. Okay, this is then the days before everything was on Excel and like that. Okay.
Yeah, now
So
the binder's
now-
in a big bag and you carry it around.
All right. So now I'm going to attempt to share my screen and bring up the. Let's see if I can find. And this is not what I wanted to be. Okay, just a minute.
We need to take the watermark off, please. It interferes with our reading when you share
Yeah.
screen.
Let me go to Google Drive. And somehow my,
Is mine?
okay, so. Here we go. These are the meeting notes from our last meeting on September 30th. Take a look at them and see if you see anything that needs to be fixed. Last time we met at 6:30, shortly after 6:30. Ashley, Chris, myself, Lisa Raymond, Mike Falcone, Amy Ashley Moore, Laser Alert, Carol Allen, Gabriella Barahoma, Dave Breechlaw, Megan Hack, Katie McGee, Donna Morton, Steve Morton, Fred Seba, James Wadick, Faisal Siddiqui, Sarah Lazari, and Walter Simon attended. I became the chair. We modified our charges last year from last year. on the finance side, we had a comprehensive annual financial report format coming in, and that'll render our 5-year financial plan goal redundant. We only need one big report, multi-year report, not two. I sent that off to the superintendent since then, and she has not yet posted it on a district agenda, so that's still pending. Determining we'll have monthly meetings this year. There's a schedule in tonight's agenda that we can look at the dates. Determine we'll have monthly meetings. Okay. We talked about the CRSA grant money that had been awarded and that will cover part of our phase 1 ECP mechanical ventilation fixes, which is a good thing. We talked about the American Rescue Plan. I think those things are still on the agenda. It was pending at the time that we had submitted what we needed to look at. We talked about the energy performance contract. I'm hoping to have an update on that tonight. Our external audit, I believe all of that, the external audit and the internal audit are ongoing at this point. We can see if there's been any change with that. We'll talk to Lisa. Okay. We already talked about the 5-year budget plan. The repair reserve fund balance will depend on leftover funds from fiscal 2021, which is how much money we've got is all caught up in the audits. Okay, so that's still being worked, I think. Proposition 1, creation of a capital reserve fund. That's December 14th. That is approaching. We reviewed the status of our facilities. We went down the line from building to building. You got the ECP main building, phase 1, the vestibule, which I think we'll go over all of these things again tonight and see what has changed. We briefly discussed improvements for the project status spreadsheet. We had an idea of how to change it. I think tonight, maybe the treasurer might be out. I think we have a sample that we'll look at of maybe to figure out if this is what you wanted to do to the spreadsheet. And we'll just look at that sample and we'll do the status basically verbally. And then we'll look at that and see if it's this what you want to do to the entire spreadsheet. And then next meeting, we'll come back with the full blown thing. Discuss the status of the mansion. We went through a history of the mansion, what the requirements to reoccupy it, what the allowable uses were. We looked at the deed a little bit. And talked about that. And the one thing that we were missing was the numbers. We didn't know at that point what it would cost to get the mansion back open, all in. We're hoping to hear that tonight. And then the committee opted to reconvene at our next monthly meeting. In the meantime, we should determine whether new federal aid for ventilation projects allows us to reallocate phase 1 funding. Lisa can address that. The amount of remaining funds after closing the books. Again, the audit. Latest BBS cost estimate for reoccupying the mansion, ECP classroom population requirements, any changes to administrative staff requirements. That's what we talked about last time. It was a long meeting, 9:45 p.m. Anybody see anything that needs to be amended? Do I hear a motion to adopt these minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Minutes adopted. Okay, next item on the agenda. So I'm going to go back and find the agenda here. Okay, we are here. Committee charges and meetings. I already talked about the fact that we submitted our revised charges and we're waiting for the superintendent to put those in a board agenda. Possible meeting dates. And thanks to Chris Vallon, we have a list of possible meeting dates. I made a few changes in cases in which I thought there was a scheduling conflict. So I'm looking now at Wednesday, November 17th. Let me make sure. As our next meeting, because there was a government and a policy committee meeting on the 18th. So I pulled it back to the 17th. Thursday, December 2nd. The only thing I've got on the calendar is RJ Bailey Book Club at 6 p.m. This is the old hard copy calendar. Thursday, January 6th. No conflict there. Thursday, January 27th. In the same calendar month, but several weeks away. And there were Regents exams during the day, and there was a parent coffee in the morning. I didn't see ECP pre-registration night. I didn't think that I needed to move off of that. Then Wednesday, February 16th, there's a book club meeting at Bailey. Thursday, March 17th or March 24th. Now we have a choice here. March 17th is St. Patrick's Day, also the night of the Woodland Spring Musical dress rehearsal. And the 24th is the district-wide science extravaganza. And I don't know what kind of shape we'll be in COVID-wise as to whether that will resurface or not. And those were the choices that were put up.
I'd like to,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
the 24th is the snow date for the extravaganza, if that event is being held. Just want to point that out.
Okay, so I'd rather go for the 24th then. What do other people think? Okay. March
24th.
24th. Okay. Wednesday, April 27th, before the budget hearing on May 3rd. April 27th, Administrative Professional Day. There's a New York State math exam during the day. I don't have any evening events that conflict with it. I'm good with that. The budget hearing is at a board meeting on the following Tuesday, and that's a Wednesday. So that gives you like a week. So I think that's okay. Thursday, May 19th, after the budget vote, assuming that people have to recover from the extravaganza of the budget on the 17th. That gives an extra day for that. That's fine. There's WMHS National Junior Honor and National Honor Society induction and senior awards ceremony in the auditorium, and it doesn't list a time on the 19th. Anybody who's a parent of a, yes. Chris? Yeah.
Well, before COVID, I believe they did that during the day.
Okay. Good. So we'll leave it.
At least part of it, yeah. I could be wrong, but we'll leave it at that.
And then Thursday, June 16th, 11:30 a.m. dismissal middle school finals, Regents exams, picnics, all daytime stuff. So I'm good with this list. Anybody have any objections? Shall we adopt this as our list of meetings for the year?
So move.
Yes, let's adopt it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. We have a list of meetings. I'll post it on the district website, and then we'll put it on the online calendar and all the kind of good things that need to happen. Okay, next item. Finance, Lisa Raymond.
Okay, so
Run down the list. Yeah.
Sure. So the CRISA grant and the American Rescue Plan update, we've submitted the American Rescue Plan grant. We haven't heard anything back, whether it has been adopted or approved or not yet. The CRISA grant was approved, so we have that in place. But as you know, it is an ongoing documentation. As the year has progressed, Dr. Macaluso, Dr. Iverson, and I are reviewing things that we could use these grants for. So they could possibly change, but right now everything is still intact. So I would say that's more to be determined in the future. But right now we've received 20% of our CRISA grant. And that's really what happens with the federal grants. Once you submit them, once they're approved, you get 20% of the award to start using. But from that point forward, if we want to collect any more of what we have been awarded, we have to prove that we have spent the money in order to receive it back. So we are on par with that right now. And then as far as the energy performance contract update, I would like to defer to both Fred and Jim to give us an update on that.
Okay. Fred or
Hey,
Jim?
Regarding the energy performance contract, do you want me to jump in now or do you want me to?
Yep.
Okay. So we got 3 proposals, which we had discussed last time. They range from about 3.5 million to 11 million. I have gone through the Con Edison Solutions proposal, which was the 11 million proposal. It looks very, very good. I have some questions for them, and I'm going to be calling them tomorrow with my questions. It takes a lot of scope and puts it into the energy performance contract. One of the really great things that they were able to work in was gas service upgrades at all of your school buildings, which is
Okay.
great news. Now, I have questions on that because of the savings that they showed, but I will talk to them about that. The other one that I completely got through is Day Automation. Day Automation was the $3.5 million project. They only have 4 items in there. They have controls in there. They have lighting in there. They have insulation in there, weather stripping. Actually, just those 3 items. So it's a very limited work scope. They did not work in, a lot of the things that Con Ed worked in. So at this point, I don't think it's as good a proposal in the district's best interest at the point, but I do have questions for them. So I will be calling them tomorrow as well. And the third one is by Energy Systems Group, ESG. And I am about halfway through reading through that, and I'm hoping to finish it over the weekend and be able to call them on Monday and ask my questions of them. So once I do that, I have created a matrix, a comparison matrix. Once I do that and get my questions answered, I will update the matrix and I will send that up to the district for discussion. And send it to Lisa and Michael and talk about things, what they like, what they don't like about the different proposals. And then, I don't know, is that something that you want to come to the committee level, or how do you want to handle that, David?
I think I want to talk to the board president and see what she wants to do. I know traditionally what has happened is that we would have the board look at it, but we never made it quite as far as signing off on an energy performance contract in the other times we tried it. The deal has gotten better. There are more guarantees at the state level than there were last time. But I'm hoping the board will move forward with this. I can check with her and see if she'd like a committee recommendation first. But definitely the board needs to look at it because it's a $5 million plus item.
Right. Okay. So that's where that stands.
Okay. Ask Tracy. Okay. Status of comprehensive annual financial report.
Yes.
Lisa.
So let me give you a little update in history on our audits. So the internal audit that the board had asked last year for Tobin and Company to do a deeper dive. They did federal grants. We got that back. We discussed it at the audit committee level, and there were some deficiencies there. Nothing that I think was too egregious, but Dr. Macaluso and I have met along with Dr. Iverson, and we are putting together a federal grants procedure list, and we're going to try to revamp that whole process so that we're more in line with what is the federal standards and the state standards. So that is an ongoing process. Tobin and Company for this year, for the 21-22 school year, they are going to begin their internal risk assessment on November 15th. That whole week they will be here and they will be interviewing staff so that we can do that audit that will have to go to the state. Once they're done with it, they present it to the audit committee. The audit committee presents it to the board. We will upload it to the state with a corrective action plan. And then the audit committee could pick a deeper dive in one of those categories that were listed from previous years. The external audit is almost completed. I've been working with them again today to get some of the numbers to finalize them. Along with the external audit is something that's called a single audit, and that is on federal funds. So they will pick one of our biggest federal funds and they have to do a single audit. So that means they have to do an audit just on those programs. And they're a little behind on that, gathering some information, et cetera, but it's almost done. I can tell you that it looks like when we went to the taxpayers to approve the 21-22 budget, we also asked the taxpayers that anything that was over the 4%, which is allowed by law for us to save in a reserve, an unassigned reserve for emergency purposes, anything that was over the 4%, we could put into the repair reserve. And right now that looks about $4 million that will go to the repair reserve. Once we go for referendum on December 14th, to ask the taxpayers if we could create a capital reserve, which is more efficient than a repair reserve. This $4 million and change, they haven't finalized the number, will go to the repair reserve. We'll have a public hearing like we did last year on the repair reserve to ask the taxpayers, once they approve a capital reserve, can we transfer that money now to a capital reserve, which gives us a broader range of items that we could use that money for. So I'm waiting on that. I would expect no later than the end of next week, we should have that done. And then I will contact Trustee Valen to set up another audit committee meeting so that the external auditors can present that audit, so that then it can be presented to the board by the audit committee so that it could be accepted, so that then I can upload it to SED as required with a corrective action plan.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay.
So then the property boundary update, Michael, I would ask you if you could address that.
I'm trying to click these things here. I've been to the houses that they had, some questions at. They've removed, except for one house, they removed, any objects that are on our property. But yet they have a full lawn there. So, without putting a fence saying that this is definitely our property, who's to say that they can have parties there every weekend but otherwise, except for one house, which I went there twice, nobody was at the door. There's only one house that I know of that has a shed still on it.
Okay, thank you, Michael. As far as the repair reserve fund balance, again, I just spoke about that. We do have money that's in there that's designated for the mansion roof repair. Once this external audit is done and money is moved into there, all of this can be moved to the capital reserve once that is established. And again, we'll have a broader range of scope of what we could do with those monies. On December 14th, we're asking the taxpayers to vote on two different propositions. One is to establish a capital reserve. And again, a capital reserve is more broader in a range than a repair reserve. Repair reserve is just for repairs, what is defined by law as a repair. Capital reserve, we could use for repairs. We could use for building improvements. We could use for building. It's a broader range, which is better for the district than a repair reserve. So that will be on December 14th. Dr. Iverson, who has joined us now. Welcome, Dr. Iverson.
Thank you.
We are working with our PR people so that
Yeah.
we can get it out in our newsletter and get it out in a mailing to the taxpayers to actually describe and explain what a capital reserve is. So we are working with her. We should hopefully will be able to get that out soon.
Katie McGee just raised her hand.
Hi, I have a question about the vote. Is there any like minimum amount of votes we need, or is it a regular like two
Nope.
people vote yes and one person votes no and it?
Nope, it's put out to all of the taxpayers, just like it would be in a budget vote. Anybody who comes out can vote and it'll be the majority. But we will explain explicitly, because it's something that is new to our taxpayers. So a capital reserve is very restrictive. And when I say that, I mean that you cannot establish a capital reserve without the taxpayers saying, yes, go ahead and do it. Then what you do is say to the taxpayers, we want to keep this capital reserve open for, we picked 10 years. And over 10 years, let us put in up to, not to exceed $15 million. It doesn't mean we're going to put in $15 million. It just means we can't exceed that amount. So every year when we do the budget, like we have that we're putting in the repair reserve, we can put excess money into the capital reserve, but we cannot exceed $15 million in the 10 years. Now, let's say 10 years lapses, or we get to the 10-year point and we don't put a referendum up to the public. Those monies end at 10 years and they have to come back to the general fund. So it's really very restrictive. So I think from what I've heard, people are confused or they're not sure. When we said 10 years, $15 million, it doesn't mean we're putting that exact dollar amount in it. We can't exceed $15 million and we have 10 years to do this. So let's just say, for example, in 3 years, let's say we have $6 million in there. And let's say that the Finance and Facilities Committee says, we want to propose a project, like, let's say like a phase 2. We could use this from the capital reserve to fund it, and the taxpayers would have to approve that.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes. After you.
I think, Chris, you had your hand up first.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I time with him. So we're putting something in the newsletter. This committee is discussing it. We mention it at every board meeting so far. Are we looking at other ways to spread the word? Are we going to make a video and post it on Facebook? Are we going to attend PTA meetings or other committees?
So it's my understanding, and Dr. Iverson, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but it's my understanding that we are putting out weekly updates, and this will be part of it. We will put it on our social media. We will put it on our webpage. We're going to send out a postcard. It'll be in our school newsletter. We are putting out as much information as we can to educate the taxpayers.
Yes,
Great.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy?
Yes. So this capital reserve fund, I think I understand the concept of why it's being created. Who ultimately, is it the board that decides how the money is used, or how is it?
Okay, so what happens is a capital reserve fund is very, very restrictive. And I mean that in the sense that it is taxpayer dependent. To establish a capital reserve, we have to ask the taxpayers to say yes. Once you say yes, we establish it. Let us contribute for the next 10 years up to $15 million. You say yes. Now, the board or the Facilities Committee presents to the board, we want to do a phase 2 project. Here's what we want to do. We want to use money from the capital reserve. That has to go to the taxpayers in a vote to say, yes, we'll let you take X million dollars from the capital reserve to fund phase 2. So it's all taxpayer driven.
Wait, so to spend, if we put up to $15 million to spend the 15 million, we still have to have a vote on it? Is that what you mean?
Correct, correct. Yes.
Then what's the advantage of having that account versus just a general budget or just a,
Well, you could still budget every year. We could still budget money, but remember, if we budget the money, which we have in the past, but for any money that we add to a budget, that could either, how are we going to fund that? It would most likely be to raise taxes. So let's say this year we have a $77 million budget. Let's just say we only spend 76 million. That extra 1 million, we could say, put that into the capital reserve. So you've already paid your taxes on that, but it's going to the capital reserve so that in the future we can use that. That isn't going to raise your taxes.
Yeah, that 4% maximum otherwise.
Correct.
I guess my main concern is that we have a lot of big projects that likely will exceed the 15 million. You know, even over 10 years, we put in 15 million, right?
Correct.
Just the, if
So-
we were talking about the mansion roof, that's quite a few millions right there already.
Right. So Mrs. Swang, this is the whole gist behind a capital reserve. You can either fund a project completely if it was a small project, or you could say, taxpayers, we need to do X, Y, and Z throughout our whole campus. It's going to cost us $35 million, but we have $10 million in a capital reserve. Let's use that 10 million and we only have to bond 25 million. So it helps offset what you would have to bond.
And that's what I'm expecting to talk about towards the end of this meeting. How would the mansion numbers fit in with a phase 2 project? And there are various roofs that need to be fixed.
Right.
And yes, I think we should end up with a bond very shortly, not in December, but very shortly, and money from the reserve that we create should make the bond smaller than it would need to be otherwise.
Correct. Correct. And I see Miss
Are we
Allen
good?
has her hand up.
Yeah. Okay, Carol?
Ms. Raymond, I believe I heard you say that the capital reserve could be used to make repairs. Is that correct?
Capital reserve can be made, yes, you can use it for a broader scope than a repair reserve. Correct.
Would repairs being made out of the capital reserve require shareholder approval?
Correct. Yes, it would. Anytime you want to spend money out of a capital reserve, you have to get voter approval.
Do we also have to have the voter approval to make repairs out of the repair reserve, which we currently have?
No. The repair reserve, if you remember, we asked that at the budget vote. There was remember how we advertised and we said anything that was in excess of the 4 million, or I'm sorry, 4% would go to the repair reserve.
And then a public hearing for disbursements.
Right. So the voters approved that. But you got to remember, a repair reserve can only be used for repairs, and repairs as defined by state education law are very tight.
All right, so money for repairs out of the repair reserve only has to have a public hearing.
A public hearing, correct.
But repairs out of the capital reserve require a vote.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay.
So David, if we move on to facilities, the Warburg campus fire hydrant issue, I've spoken with Fred. Previously, both Mike, Dr. Iverson, and I have spoken with him, and I saw Jim Waydig today. Just to give a little blurb before I ask Fred and Jim to weigh in, we had our annual test by Chief Maceda from the Hartsdale Fire Department, and our fire hydrants on Pat Capone Road and on Pinewood Drive, I believe it's called, did not pass the pounds per water pressure, whatever it's called.
Gallons per
Gallons per
That's
minute.
it, gallons per minute. So we immediately, we had a meeting with him. Chief Maceda put a plan in place until we can get this fixed with other fire departments. And then Mike and I and Chief Maceda met with Fred Seba from our architects to come up with a plan. I know that Jim Waydig was out today to do other work on the phase 1 project, but was also looking at some of our water issues. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Fred and Jim to give you more of an update.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So as Lisa mentioned, I believe there are 5 fire hydrants on the overall property between the mansion and the high school, that entire piece of property. And I believe all 5 of them were below what was required by the flow test. So I believe they were all in the range of about 280 gallons per minute, which is fairly low. And that's why the fire department was very concerned. They need more water than that in order to fight a large fire, and they don't have the water flow that they really need to be able to do that. So I believe we found out about this Tuesday morning. I know Michael called me, and then Michael and Lisa called me, and we got the fire chief on with us to discuss what the issue is. So the problem that we have, we're starting to analyze this, but the problem that I think we all have is that there's no real site plan that shows everything, all of the hydrant locations, all of the piping that goes to it. I believe Michael has a lot of that in his head. So we're going to have to remove some of that, Michael, get that out of there and get that on a drawing so that we can really draw what's up there. There are 2 water services that serve that campus from 2 ends of it in different directions, which complicates things a little bit. Fortunately, when Lisa and Michael had the fire chief on with us, he had a lot of information as far as testing they had done, as far as static pressures and flow rates. So they were able to actually get him a FOIL request form while we were on the phone, and he was able to provide that information to us. So I have that information now. David Warner was able to send me some information that was from, I believe, 2018 or 19, when this discussion came up originally and the concern came up originally. So that provided some more information to us. There have been lines that have been abandoned. There are lines that have water meters on them, so we need to check the water meters for pass-through flow rate. There is one line that has a reduced pressure zone RPZ backflow preventer on it. So we have to check that and the sizing on that to make sure that that's not one of the issues that's creating the low flow rate. So a lot of that is calculations. So really what we need to do is we need to draw the whole site. We need to draw all the hydrants. We need to draw which water service they're fed from. We need to draw the water piping size that feeds them. And then we can run some rough calculations and try and figure out what's going on. So that's the process we're in now. Michael was also reaching out to the local water department to get whatever information he could get from them, because it's very important for us to know what the street pressures are and what the main sizes are in the street. And that's the information I think he was trying to get from them. So we are in process. Jim was up there today looking at it. So as soon as we get all of our information together, we'll sit down and start to run some calculations and determine if it's, maybe the line sizing is not proper. Maybe some of those lines are very, very old and they started out as a 6-inch line, but the interior of the pipe has corroded. So now it's down to a 4-inch line, and that's not large enough in order to give us our flow rates. We're guessing at this point what it is, but those are the answers that we will try and come up with once we have all of these hydrants and the piping drawn on paper and can actually run some engineering calculations. Michael, did you want to add anything to that?
Yep. And Fred, just let me add to this, which I didn't do in the beginning. Chief Maceda has, and I might have mentioned it, has worked it out with other fire departments in our area. In the case of an emergency, there is a plan put together by the Hartsdale Fire Department to be able to service us in the event of an emergency.
So does that involve having multiple fire engines be like
Yes.
intermediate pumping stations?
Yes,
Get
so
water on
what,
the street?
what Chief Masada told us, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Iverson also.
Yep, yep.
They would take their fire trucks and put them hundreds of feet apart from each other, and they would hook up their hoses and connect to the town's fire hydrant in order to pump water to us in any of the given areas that we would need it.
Correct.
Let's see, Chris?
First question, you mentioned there are 5 hydrants on our property. Is there a separate hydrant that serves the apartment complex there? Kind of, I can't, I'm blanking on their name.
High Point?
Shrub Oaks? I believe Shrub Oaks does have their own fire hydrant, from what I understand from Chief Masada. And that would be the fire hydrant we would tap into, right, Michael?
Yes, see, that fire hydrant is on a separate main, a different main. That complex has their own main that comes off of West Hartsdale Avenue, and that fire hydrant is on that main. Our fire hydrant goes down the roadway, and it's separately, and you'll see there's 3 on that line on the West Hartsdale Avenue coming in. There's 3 fire hydrants on that line. On the opposite side where the high school is, we have a separate service that comes over, and it serves 2 fire hydrants over there.
So, okay, so as far as when we get to the point where we have to work on the lines and possibly the hydrants, ours are not town owned, they're ours because we have private roads, so the cost is on us?
Yes.
So from our understanding 3 or 4 years ago, the district assumed the responsibility for these hydrants.
3 or 4 years ago. And so in 2018, when, maybe I should just be quiet, but this was known, it was known by the fire department. I'm assuming back then they had a plan, and maybe it's just a change in administration over there, and that's why there was no plan on file for how to service us, because this has been known.
Well, we had comments, right? You found that in the secret process, right?
Yes.
Complaining about requiring upgrades. The big mystery from my perspective is one of the things that our previous set of architects wanted to do was to connect the one line with the other. That is the line that came in from the high school side and the line that came in from the West Hartsdale Avenue side. And that would imply that at least one of them had decent pressure, because otherwise why bother? So, well, you have a history now, right? You know what the pressures used to be, or at least that's what you foiled. Is that correct? How far back do you go?
Yes, and I know there are a lot of discussions, and again, it's all conjecture on my part at this point as to whether we can connect one line to the other, create a loop. I know that back in the bond referendum that was unsuccessful, there was work in there in order to upgrade all of those mains. So this has been a known issue for a period of time. So we'll take a look at it. One of the options, as Michael mentioned, is disconnecting the main to the high school and connecting it to that Shrub Oak, which has a much greater flow rate, much better pressure. That's an option. But again, I don't want to say for sure one way or the other right now, because I just don't have all the information in front of me to be able to do the math on that.
This is not Stone Oaks? Okay.
Stone Oaks.
Stone
Yeah.
Oaks. All right, got it.
Shrub Oaks.
So just to button up my question, I guess where I want to make sure that people are aware that the fire department was aware of this at least as far back as 2018 and even before that, according to those comments at the secret process. So my belief is that the fire department, at least at that time, had a plan to cover us in case of fire emergency. I don't want everyone freaking out that there hasn't been no plan. I'm hoping that what's happened is because there's a change in administration with the fire department, that maybe that plan got lost in the woods. And I'm going to be quiet. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sarah.
Hi. So can you clarify again why this is our responsibility as opposed to the town? And are other school districts within Greenburgh, do they also have this same responsibility, like Edgemont? Thank you.
If you have a fire hydrant on your on your property, it's your responsibility. You own that fire hydrant. It's just like telephone poles. Telephone poles that come onto the property, anything on our property is our responsibility, and we own it. Since I've been there, I've replaced a fire hydrant before. We have to purchase it, we have to install it, we have to maintain it.
Okay.
There are certain water districts, water authorities that will sign what's called a hydrant maintenance agreement, and they will take ownership of the hydrants. They will maintain them. But that's some process that had to have happened shortly after the hydrants typically go in. And it's my understanding that that did not happen here, and that these are considered private hydrants owned by the school district. So if there are line changes or anything that has to be done, it would be the responsibility of the district.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so we will look forward to further updates on that. And at this point, I have a few pictures of some things, but I think we should just blaze through the bulleted list of projects and tell us if anything that's new. ECP, is there any new news, Mike?
No, it's just that all the windows were completed. I think the last time I spoke to you, we had to trim them out. That whole project's completed. The boiler's completed. The baseboard in that building is completed. We had the drop ceiling. Remember, we had problems there. We sealed up all the outside. But right now, we had the fans installed. They're being, currently being used. But so far, so good at ECP.
Good.
Great. And as far as phase one is concerned, I met with Jim Wadig and his associate today. They handed me over the documents to be signed by Tracy Mears, our board president, and Dr. Iverson, so that they can be sent to the state.
Great. Good
We
to
are
hear.
still in the process of, working on some of the design work. We were doing some field work today at Highview for the roof, getting some cores and evaluation of that project. Also at the ECP, we just need to verify some things in the classroom toilets where they're being renovated. So we're still in the process of our design work, but the first thing is to, for us, is to get that paperwork signed so that we have it in our possession. So when things are ready, we're not scrambling at the last minute, like we forgot to get this signed. And then, we don't want to put that on your lap and say, hey, we need this tomorrow. So we just want to be a little proactive with that. It's nothing that has to be sent back to us tomorrow, but, hopefully in the next week or two when everyone's together.
Jim will have it to you. We have a board meeting next Tuesday. We'll get everybody to sign and we'll get it right back to you.
That was my hope, that we would hit a board meeting in stride.
Yep.
And then that would.
Yep, you got it.
There's probably one more letter that has to be sent, and I guess the question was, it's for asbestos certification. Would that go to Mike to get signed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then I can send that.
Another interesting thing about the energy performance contract is some of the scope that Con Edison Solutions included in their proposal included work that was in the phase one project. There was some overlap in there. So if we will have to have a discussion on that, actually, we told the ESCOs not to do that. We told them about phase one and said, do not include this work. But they had a larger scope of work on some of the air handlers at the high school. And so they were doing refurbishment of the whole air handlers. So they said, all right, you know what, we're going to redo the outdoor air intakes. We're going to replace the dampers. We're going to replace the linkages, and we're going to upgrade the controls. Part of that was under phase one, but it might make more sense to move that over to the energy performance contract, freeing up some money under phase one so that you could get some additional work done. So that's a conversation
Correct.
we'll have to have over the next couple of weeks.
Correct. David, you have two hands up, Ashley and Sarah.
Yes, I can see that. All right, Ashley?
Thank you. A few questions come to mind. We'll go in reverse order because that's how they came up in my brain. The first one, going back to ECP, Mr. Falcone, have the main drains been resolved? The pinch drains on the outside of the ECP main building?
They were there today when BBS and I were over there. They were working on those two downspouts. They were still there when I left, but I saw one of them completed, so I'm sure the other one should be completed unless he ran into a problem.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So that's the first question. The second question I had was regarding the energy performance contract versus the phase one. I think we should, and I think I mentioned this previously, anywhere possible that we can get phase one work covered by the EPC, should totally take advantage of that. And I think I mentioned that before, because as we see, our scope of work is so large that wherever we can get some money from the EPC and take advantage of that and then offload more stuff into phase one to make up the difference, we should absolutely do that so we could move forward. So I just want to state that again in case I didn't make myself clear previously.
But Trustee Pineda, I completely agree with you on that. But anything that was in phase one, if we do it from ECP, if we do it from CRISA or American Rescue Plan, then that money is going to be freed up that can't be assigned to something else until we tell the taxpayers.
That's fine. But the fact is, we'll at least have the money, which is the hardest part, right? I think the taxpayers would easily approve it. And I would venture to guess that any of the taxpayers on this call would say yes, if we already have the money covered up with
No,
the money.
correct. I just don't want you to think that if we could use money from any one of those grants or from ECP that, oh, we have a couple $100,000, let's do this. We can't do that. It's got to go back into the pot and then redesign it.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Make phase two cheaper.
Correct. Correct.
Well, phase two will then include more items. That's what will end up happening, I think. But at this point, it sounds like we're going to have like 10 phases till we get through all of this, but that's okay. All right. Yeah, that was it. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. There was another question. Was it Sarah?
Oh, no, that was leftover. Sorry.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. Was there some information in phase one regarding a bathroom in the administration building that no longer exists?
Yeah, that was with the two toilets that were down by the two ECP rooms that where the water leak was, they had to be completely gutted and removed when the due to the water damage. So there was
are they now in scope of phase one, or is it or did you pull them?
They're still listed in the work scope, but we haven't done any project design on that.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
So we're pretty much leaving the mansion stuff alone for the time being.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. High school vestibule.
Okay, so I have been dealing with that. Both Carlos Ramirez and I have been. We have been in touch with our facilities planning person. Her name is Sigrid Koons. She reviewed the project. She sent back to BBS some concerns. Jim Waydig and I have been going back and forth, and we submitted a letter to facilities planning confirming issues so that we could further process. Once facilities planning approves it, then it will come into the queue. We're already in the queue. So here's the problem. Because of the pandemic, the Smart Schools Committee has ceased. They haven't met, they haven't reconvened. And Dr. Iverson and I are going to be meeting with Senator Cousins in the next couple weeks. And we're going to ask her to please push and reconvene the committee so that we can get our vestibule pushed through so that we can get it started.
Correct. Okay.
The plans for the vestibule have been submitted to the state. We did receive comments from the reviewers. We've addressed those comments and submitted back an addendum. And I think the indication I've received is that engineering is satisfied with the responses. One of the things that we had to send back with the addendum was a letter from the district about the egress windows were smaller than allowed by code. But since any of this work wasn't affecting classrooms specifically or modifying spaces, that they were pre-existing non-conforming and should be allowed to remain so that this project could be approved to move forward, and that we would have them in the list of projects that would be included in an upcoming bond, but no date given specifically as to what that bond may be.
Okay. Is that in the building addition survey anywhere?
It was. Window replacement throughout the building was like $9 million.
Okay, so it's there, so we won't lose it. Okay. Good. Any other questions? Okay. We already spoke on the energy performance contract. Curbs and sidewalks. See Woodlands High School gym driveway pictures. Just a minute.
So just while David is bringing up those pictures, Michael has worked with his team and his contractor that we are going to widen that front of the curb. And he has put a white line and a stop sign down so we can try to control the traffic and try to widen it so it is more safe. We will monitor it, and we will look to the future to see if we need to widen the road.
I spoke with the contractor a few days ago, and I asked him, I says, are we still on track? And he says, yes, hopefully towards the end of next week. Not that area. I think you got to give me another picture. Towards the end of next week, he will start where the entrance is, on widening just that where the bend is. That's the area that we're going to start widening. We're going to start right where you see the curb starts to go down on a little indentation, and exactly where the sign is. That we're going to start bending it in a little bit, and it's going to reconnect to the curbing just a little further down the line.
See what else we've got.
So may I ask my question while you're pulling up pictures?
Go ahead.
So you estimate the contract will start at the end of next week. How are we going to communicate to the parents who drop off or have sports issues on any different traffic flow pattern they might need to be aware of?
I ended up talking to the contractor at the same time, and he says, we will try to work it around that. Okay, so in the mornings, of course, he's not going to start that early in the morning. He will get there right after flow has stopped. He'll end up starting to excavate and taking the curbing out, because that's where you're going to need, maybe if there was a lot of flow, people will slow down. But he can probably take out all the curbing before the afternoon. And then on the widening part, he can still work on that. Towards the afternoon, he'll slow down, pull aside, and hopefully continue in the later day.
So if we're looking at this photo, we're talking about the left side is what's
Left.
cutting out.
Mhm.
And that's the part that does not have, you had said last time that there were wires or something under the road. That's on the other side of the,
That's the wires that are, yes, if on the road that goes up to the high school, okay, that has wires going across.
okay. But this issue here has no problem. We're going to take out the left and begin late next week. Thank you.
Carol?
I'm curious as to how much this is going to cost.
I'm trying to remember what the price was.
Ballpark figure.
We have estimated it's gonna cost about $20,000.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Other questions? Okay. Long as I have you here, this is these are a couple of photographs of the furnace connections that were upgraded in the ECP basement when we did our facilities tour. We didn't go down the steep stairs, but there was some work done. Just so you know.
You're lucky you didn't go down those stairs. They are pretty, I was down there today.
Mhm. Yeah, that's another issue.
Yeah. Okay. So now. Here we are. Okay, so we just did curbs and sidewalks. High school, Bailey and Jackson were all summer projects. Is there anything new to report?
No, I don't think so.
Nothing- No, nothing new.
All right, so we can actually pull those off for future meetings.
Right. So
And
the
then
tennis
renew
court,
it for the next season, right? Go ahead.
right, so the tennis court estimates, you know, Michael and I have been trying to work on this. We'll work with Fred and Jim to see, you know, what estimates we could come up with to get this work done.
Lisa, I have, me and Mike had spoken about a product that I think would be useful out there. So I do have some information to share, at least to
Okay.
open a discussion. So the product that, you know, we mentioned to Mike is, it's a synthetic turf product that's used on tennis courts, and it's specifically used on asphalt courts because it's asphalt courts are notorious for getting put down. You fix all the subgrade, and then 2 years later you're dealing with cracks again, and then you're infilling with caulks and elastomerics, and they just break down. And then in 3 or 4 years you're doing a major repair, and the thing never looks right after the second year. The product that we've used in some Nassau County schools and a lot of municipalities are using, and condo associations, is this synthetic. It's a grass product that has an infill that gives it a density of playable surface like an asphalt court, but it lays over the existing asphalt as a synthetic turf type of, like a football field, if you're familiar with those, but they don't use rubber granules as the infill material. The matrix is more of a denser a small, like I say, a stone. It still has some resiliency to it, but it packs much denser and gives you a surface that's like you're walking on a hard packed clay or something. So I spoke to a contractor or a supplier of this particular product who had approached us in a Fort Washington school, and we were considering using it there. And once this discussion came up in our last meeting, I said, hey, this sounds like a perfect opportunity to at least mention it here, because the condition of your courts, and this might be a viable alternative. It's got some advantages for installation. Number one, it could be put down year round. There's no temperature issues where you got to wait for the asphalt to be able to be placed, and then you got to wait for the right temperature for the coating to paint out the courts. It goes down. The only thing you need to deal with is the existing asphalt. If it does have some very large cracks, they just need to be cleaned up and filled. But once they're determined that the court itself has got a very level surface, then they can put this product over it. If it does require some re-leveling, then that could be done as well. So we did get information. If you want to, you could do a screen share for me, or I can get a
Okay,
screen
so
share.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay, you try.
So I'm gonna bring up. You got that?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Is it here? Oh, maybe it's here. Hold on.
Big green button at the bottom that
There
says
we go.
share screen. There we go.
There you go.
So these are the tennis courts over by the gym. This green box. So this would be the area that I took off as being 20,000 square feet, and that's typically a tennis court. For that amount of courts, that's the asphalt area that you'd be considering. I don't know what the asphalt area is out here, other than maybe where the teams kind of put their gear before they play or whatever. I don't really know. I wasn't, fortunately, haven't physically been back there to see this portion of it. But so I was just looking at the actual court areas that were painted and fenced. So this is the location that I had indicated would need to be done at that square footage. And so this is where we came with an estimate. So the product that would go down over the asphalt would be $170,000. Then there'd be some replacement of the perimeter fencing, I'm assuming. I don't, typically once you do your courts, you go and you do the fencing as well, so it all looks new. And then if there's some work that needs to be done above and beyond just the crack filling to level out the courts, to make them, the surface to be flat the way it needs to be, probably another 20,000. So one time you add in all the design contingencies, fees, and everything else, it's about $283,000 for those courts.
What would we typically budget for removal and replacement of the asphalt courts, Jim? It's about 180,000 a court, something like that.
Right. It's 180,000 a
that-
court, or for one court versus 283 for all three courts.
Right. So for three courts, it would be $540,000 if you were to rip them out and put typical asphalt courts back in with a resilient surface. This way,
right.
Obviously, it's almost half of that.
Right. I'm going to ask you what would happen if we went to 5 courts, but Ashley?
I do have a question. So thank you for putting this together. Are we also in the parallel track on the finance side of things? Are we looking into what grants we could apply for, how we could somehow minimize this cost to the district?
I don't know how this would fit into a grant, being that it's site related, unless there's some sort of athletic program grants that are available, for improving athletic facilities. But I've never seen one in my experience, but maybe Lisa knows of something that's available in that regard. I don't know if any of the, I don't think the CRISA grant money or any of the other money the government is
No, none of
issuing.
that would apply. We would have to look under Grants Finance.
I think there was a private grant that the tennis coach, I believe it was the tennis coach, brought a company in, but I think we had to expand it to 6 courts. But
okay,
I wasn't involved in that. I just heard about it.
But perhaps we could restart that conversation. And I know the USTA also does grants sometimes, so we can look at all those possible sources. I mean, even if we get $10,000 from any of them, that'll still help.
Yeah, USTA, that's the tennis organization. I think that was the company that he brought over. I don't know what happened to it. Tomorrow I'll see if I can, grab him. I don't know if he's still the tennis coach at the time, but this was several years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But I'll ask him. He had connections, or he knew who to talk to.
so, all right, Carol, go ahead.
We have critical needs that must be addressed before we spend over $250,000 on tennis courts, in my opinion.
And I would respond to that by saying that there are people who want to go out and seek private funding for this. and they needed a target, like a funding goal. And so if it happens that now you've got a number, all right, that will get you something. The one question I would ask you is if you had to increase the number of courts and then instead of finishing out the courts, you put this material on it, would you save anything per court? Or is this simply a replacement cost? How much is the additional cost if you were to make a new court and cover it with this material? And then if it's 5 courts or 6 courts, in order to have a tennis meet at your school, then they'll know, what funding goal they've got to make.
Right, if you were gonna go to add the 3 more courts to make it 6, I would think the recommendation from the vendor would be, at that point, you remove the asphalt courts that are there because you no longer need to resurface what's there. And when you go to add the other 6, you got to use a different substrate. They wouldn't go back with asphalt and then put the surface over it. They would start with a drainable material under the surface, similar to what they put down on a football field, that gets a densely packed layer of stone that allows the water to be drained through and into a matrix that, carries, drains the water appropriately under the court. So I would think there would be added cost, maybe because they would have to remove the asphalt so they can configure the 6 courts, because I'm kind of looking here, you may have to squeeze some in here, but then you may need to grab space back here. So I think these things are going to move.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying?
but that's exactly what the guy was talking about, and that they brought me over there. They said, did I mind if they added this and added that? And I said, I'm sure the district doesn't mind if you added that area, exactly what you just said.
Okay, so we have an estimate for resurfacing our existing courts, and we'll have to go back to the tennis experts and see.
So this is what 6 courts would look like.
Right, so we'll lose a couple of trees.
And you'd be right up against the backstop, which is okay, not
There might be
great.
a batting cage over there that you might be running into, if I
They
remember.
just can't practice their batting then, I guess. We gotta. These can be offset. They don't have to be on top of each other, but it's much neater when they're straight. I don't want to get too close. That's an egress way out of the school, so that becomes
Right, you can't move it up too far.
But these may have a little bit more overlap than what I'm showing here.
The batting cage is on the opposite side of, it's on first base side.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, this has been,
Tree
aside from some bleachers, but this is
Yeah.
what you're looking at. So I would say the asphalt that's there would be gone, and then they would just go back with whatever undersurface they would typically use.
Well, there's a stream over there too. Anyway, we're not at that point yet. David, sorry, my hand is up. about
Yes,
this.
go ahead, Chris.
I'm just curious. First, I'd like to state I completely sympathize with Carol's comments. I think I've expressed those myself before, but I also value David's input. And we do have community members who are looking into private sources of funding. So I think 10 minutes on this will help move that along. And to that point, I'm curious if anyone on this call knows if there are any restrictions to a public school district basically selling naming rights to a tennis court, for example, or similar. I'm new to this, so I don't know if there are any prohibitions.
So Chris, we belong to what's called Grantswatch, and we look at that. I do look at that all the time to see what grants are available. And there are a lot of grants that are available for facilities, for athletics, from different organizations. And even like Miss Allen said, even if it's $10,000, we'll try to apply for it, but we have to meet the requirements.
Okay, and there's a minimum number of tennis courts requirement?
It's not so much that there's no. It's all based on free and reduced price lunch.
Okay, we can
That
do
kind of thing.
Okay.
Let's say our new neighbors, I don't want to pick out any companies, but company A says they're not participating in Grantswatch, but they decide, oh, we really want to build a relationship with Greenburgh Central School District, we'd like to contribute X amount towards the tennis courts. Is that kind of donation and possible naming
Yes.
the court after company A allowed, or?
Correct. No, it is.
Okay.
That they could make a donation to the school district. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, so at this point, you should probably stop sharing your screen. And I will go back to sharing mine. Okay, so we are bus garage boiler. Mike.
That's completed. That's working fine. It got air bound, of course, but that's any new boiler that goes in, but it's working fine.
Right. And the high school wheelchair ramp, that is all in discussion with the vestibule. Nothing has changed there.
Okay.
Did have a chance to look at that a little bit today when I was out there, Lisa?
No,
So I
I
have some
haven't.
information to share.
Nope, nope, I haven't. The Morton House that has been demolished.
Wait. Did he have information to share?
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead.
So if you can bring me back where I could screen share. You see that, right?
Yes, we see it.
So the area that we're considering, as Lisa mentioned, it's kind of in conjunction with the vestibule, which would sit right under the canopy, which is about right here. So this gray area in the outline box is what we would look at as a ramp solution. I know there's the lift solution, but let's just start with the ramp. It's doable. It would probably be your best option because you'd be able to come right in off a sidewalk after a drop-off area here and get on the ramp. You go down one level, it's about 26 feet in length, then to a landing, and then 26 feet back. Your vertical height between the sidewalk and the plaza is 4.5 feet. So a ramp has for ADA requirements, you can only go 1 inch over 12 feet. So it adds up, it takes up a lot of space. 1 inch over 1 foot. So this length is about 30 feet long, and typically you have a 5-foot ramp. Because this plaza is about a little bit over 10 feet, it just takes up the whole grass area between the sidewalk and that retaining wall. So it kind of fits nicely. You wouldn't lose any of your existing plaza, and it just kind of fits into that space. And it would, so you would come in off the sidewalk, go down to a landing, and then come back, and then be right at the side entry, that handicap entry into the vestibule. So it really aligns nicely. There would be, all this would have to be excavated out. This retaining wall would have to be cut back and, reconstructed so that you can build this ramp. So we looked at an estimate for that. So we would have the concrete retaining wall that's there would have to be cut back so that they could form the new concrete. You'd have to remove all that earth that's built up behind the retaining wall so that you can form and do all the work that needs to be done. You need to stabilize I have retaining wall, but you have to stabilize the sidewalk, which would mean building a kind of a false wall as you're doing your excavation. And then you eventually put a retaining wall in front of that. You just have an idea of an allowance just to put some shoring in place. And then you'd have your new
So all of
construction.
this work would have to come out of either the general fund and or transfer to the capital fund, because this money is not part of the smart schools money.
Right.
Right. The total is 214.
Yes.
Okay.
We did
And
consider.
David, you have questions?
Ashley.
Thank you. So Mr. Weidig, I do have a question. Looking at that picture you have up, I'm curious, I don't know much about it, but right underneath where that red box is, right? Below that, there's the overhang, right? And then below that, there are those,
Overhang, yes.
yep, and there's those bushes that trail along the side of the building. It sounds to me like most of the cost is going to come from the retaining wall work and all the stuff that has to be done there. Would it be possible to instead take out those bushes and make that the ramp so that you're not dealing with retaining walls as much? Would that be a
These
cheap
bushes
offer?
here?
Yeah.
See, well, here you're at the grade level of the sidewalk and you got to get down 4 feet to get to the floor level of the school. So you can't, you still need to build a ramp.
You would have to create retaining walls on the other side too, Ashley. Same thing.
Okay, so you wouldn't save any cost there.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Carol.
We had asked for an estimate on doing a wheelchair lift rather than doing the wheelchair ramp.
Well, no, we asked for an estimate for both. And this is an estimate for the a process where we're showing you this solution. The work for the wheelchair lift is a little more involved, but I'll tell you one thing, it's more expensive. Just starting with the lift itself, you're at $150,000. You have to build a full enclosure because this is away from the building, sitting out in the open. You can't get from here to here without building some sort of bridge. So we weren't going to consider that. We would try to tuck it into this location here where you would enter an elevator, and you can't just do a regular, like a patio lift. You need to get up 4 feet, and those wheelchair lifts that you may see at a public building that gets you up from grade level, like 2 feet into a building, that won't work here. You need to do what they call a limited use, limited access elevator, which is specific for handicap usage. You can't put freight in there. You can't put other people in there. It could just be used for a wheelchair. So that's a very specific type of application, and it does work here. But you'd need to build, in addition to the elevator enclosure, the shaftway, you need to provide an enclosure for a mechanical room, which doesn't, you're not tied to the building, so you can't get into the building, and there's really no space in here to put a mechanical room. So you would need to build your enclosure plus your shaftway, and you'd probably be up over $500,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm still thinking we can go in the side door. But
I mean, as long as you,
that's
this is
how
the
that-
whole, this is just really addressing your security, one point of entry thing.
Right.
You know, your side door, if there's going to be some way of controlling someone in a wheelchair, then that's how you currently do it. That's how you're.
That's how we would do it. Okay.
Yeah, but this does give you, in
The
addition to
option,
a
we
person
have
in
the
a
option.
wheelchair, you can bring material into your building this way, deliveries that are on a cart, you're not dragging downstairs. So it's got other purpose, but you know, its main function is for someone in a wheelchair to access.
Okay. Morton House, thank you.
Okay.
Wait, Carol, do you have another comment or?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the Morton House was completely demolished. It's gone. Mike has continued to have issues with people dumping their garbage or debris on the property. So we're going to, or we have put up a chain link fence so people can't get onto the property to dump their garbage.
Yes, the chain is now up. Okay, so it did limit people from dumping, but I just realized yesterday is that the dirt road that goes to it, they're dumping on the dirt road. So I'm trying to get a hold of somebody in the town. I would love for them to get a chain, you know, closer to the church to stop people. But I do know the golf course uses that road constantly. But we're starting to see debris on the side of the road.
Okay, Carol?
No question. I didn't put my hand down.
Okay, Chris?
All right, so the dirt road over there, is that owned by any particular entity?
So the dirt road is owned by the town, but I had to pick up garbage. If they go down the dirt road and they just throw it to the side, it's our property. So I had to clean up it once before. So, because they said there's construction debris on your property, and I went down there and I said, we didn't dump it there. So
So if
how do
we
you
keep
stop?
with the golf course and both approach the town simultaneously, would that be a stronger argument to get them to either put a chain up or?
Like I said, I put a shout out, so I'm hoping to hear back from them, soon. Like I said, I just saw it. We'll see what I can do.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, that's that. And that brings us to the spreadsheet modification sample. I believe we made several requests as to what the,
So I have been trying to tie each tab into the summary page. I'm working on it. I apologize. I just haven't had time with everything else that has been going on. I'm trying to show you what the cost was in the BCS, the Building Condition Survey, which obviously is an estimate. It's not that simple, because if part of the work is one of the items, it might not be all of the work. So I tried to give you the cost that is included in the Building Condition Survey, the cost that we paid, the actual cost, and then versus the estimate cost, because sometimes bills just haven't crossed by the time we've had our meetings. And I try to tie all of this into our summary page. It's not as easy as said. And excuse me, this week with the fire hydrant issue, that was our priority, and I haven't had a time to work on this.
okay, so in principle, the intention is to go through each tab of the main spreadsheet and make it look like this. So the question is this the right way to do it? Is this what we're looking for? Chris, what do you think?
First glance only, I like it. I do want to list the specific BCS number if it is on the BCS. But I think this meets some of our, okay, you have the category. Sorry, this is first glance, so so far so good. And you've been very busy, audits and everything else is going on, so.
And this covers my need, which is I want to keep some kind of running overall total to see how we're doing versus the total $89 million in the BCS. This will fulfill my need for that.
Correct. David, I didn't give you the summary page that you created, but I do have all of this information tied into the summary page. I didn't want to give you the summary page only because it involved more of the tabs, and I just wanted to make sure that it all tied in.
Yep. All right. So I'm happy. Chris, you have something else?
So I'm just curious. So the other reason I like the consolidated spreadsheets is so that we could quickly flip through and see the priority level too. If someone mentions tennis courts forever, where is that prioritized? Is that level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4? So I don't know if that's on a,
Well, you know what, Chris, I'm not sure. I'm
mhm.
not sure with the building condition survey that it says level 1, level 2, level 3. So I don't know about that. I
There's
can
a
make it a
supplementary
tab, and
document.
I could.
There's a supplementary document for each corresponding BCS for each facility.
Oh, okay.
And it's like a summary thing. And yeah, okay.
Okay.
You have
It
to pull
has
it.
year 1, year 2, year 3 priorities like that through 5 years.
Okay.
And you know what, as I produce
one-stop shopping.
As I produce these
Yes, I
documents,
understand.
I send them to Fred. Fred gives them, Fred, I'm sorry, is her name Joan?
Yes.
Joan reviews my spreadsheets just to make sure that I'm in line
Good.
with what I'm telling you guys, because I want to be transparent.
Good, good. So, yeah, if we can hand off some of this to BBS, that's a good thing. All right. Thank you. So are we, any other questions on that? All right, so I'm gonna come back out of this. I think. If it responds. Okay, so back to.
Top left. There you go.
The mansion. Requirements and cost to reoccupy. This is where we left off last time. And BBS Architects requested additional time to come up with what it would take to get us back into the mansion with everybody who left. So do you have some numbers for us?
Yes, can you
yeah,
give
we
Jim the ability to
looked at-
screen share again?
I will be happy to stop sharing. Yes, go ahead.
So this is all information that was in the building condition survey report. It's information that's been presented to the district and the committee prior. It just hasn't been broken down in this particular way. So Jim and I sat and we moved things into different categories that we felt were appropriate. But this is a working document. This is open for discussion. We want to get some input from you. Make sure you agree where we move things, as to what was required in order to get back in, what was required in order for everybody to get back in. So you might say, oh, no, we don't have to do that to get everybody back in. That's not required, take that out. So again, this is our first blush at it without having shown it to the district yet.
Okay.
So we wanted to break it out into, I guess, just some easy pieces to kind of explain. The first category is building envelope, exterior building. Essentially, it's the roof reconstruction project, everything that was in what we had designed and what we've investigated in terms of the overall roof itself, plus some exterior masonry that was being done around the parapets over the old pool area. Then there was some other masonry items that we saw during our recent walkthroughs. This also included some work inside the building. We call it the roof project, but there was work being done in the office spaces above the garages that had some water damage and plaster and mold issues.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always going to be some interior work tied to this roof project, as well as masonry. So roof project is just a simple term, but we like to incorporate roof and exterior wherever we can. So it did incorporate, those three facets, but not, in large scale. We was focusing on the worst areas. So it's still the roof project. So it's building envelope plus some of those interior spaces that had some deterioration in plaster, ceilings, that sort of thing.
And that's the project that was submitted and approved by State Education Department, correct? Jim?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we took it a step further when it was asked, okay, well, what else has to be done to the building internally to make it habitable? Bring our superintendent back in, business back in, whatever was there before, bring it all back in, including the early childhood program, 2 classrooms. I guess it's 3, but really only 2 needed to be reconstructed because of the water damage down in the pool area.
Mm-hmm.
So this would include reconstructing 2 classrooms plus the toilets that got damaged. The kitchen area that they had there would need to be reconstructed. All new ceilings, all new lights. There's nothing in that space anymore. What was there, 2 full classrooms, are gone. The only thing that's there is a big pool if anybody wants to have a chance to go in and check it out. But this would also include properly capping that pool with the steel structure, metal deck, concrete slab, so that hopefully there's never an issue like you experienced again. And this wouldn't be like filling it with concrete or dirt. You would still have a structure suspended across it, but it would be more stable than a wood structure like that was there. And then we went into the specifics as far as the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems that would need to be addressed. And this is where we get into some of the fresh air ventilation, replacing the fire alarm systems, the heating pipes that Mike has brought to our attention as being an issue, the domestic water lines, I'm sorry, the sanitary pipes and the domestic water lines. Fire alarm, I mentioned, other electrical that we identified in the BCS as being problematic, taking care of the, I do have some breakouts for these. Let me see what they are. Hold on.
Before you go in, quick question. The part on restoring ECP, I assume we have insurance, and insurance usually covers replacing something with whatever you lost, but not improving it, correct?
Yes.
So the amount, so the ECP classroom portion will not be completely covered by the insurance company. Do we have any idea what proportion we're looking at?
I would say you can probably take the 631,000. They didn't have that for the whole project there. I'm not quite sure. We would have to talk to the insurance company.
Okay.
So while Jim is pulling that up, I know one of the questions that was asked at the last meeting was, what would it cost to stabilize the building and then allow the district the ability to think about whether you're going to move back in or not?
Right.
And that's really that 1.6 million project that got approved by state ed. So that stabilizes the building. It makes the building watertight. It takes care of the roof. It takes care of the leaky masonry on the outside. There are a couple of areas where you have deflected floors in there. It takes care of all of that. The ceilings that were falling down, it takes them out and it redoes that. So in answer to that question, that is the dollar amount that would take care of that. And then the second part of the question was, if we wanted to move everybody back in, what else would have to be done? And that was the remainder of the balance of the monies that Jim showed previously.
Okay, and we will be able to keep this report and use it as a debating tool. Okay, so now I have an idea. So let's see. So if you did everything.
Now this is a spreadsheet just showing the work associated with the interior space. Now, Mike, you had mentioned that the ECP wouldn't, the insurance wouldn't cover 631,000. Well, it's really only 276,000 of what we determined to be the need of those ECP classrooms.
Right.
This is other stuff in addition to boiler room ceiling, fallen down, needs to be reinstalled. Fire rated door is not really a fire rated door that's there now. It needs to be installed. Egress corridor and structural stabilization of the floors that are sagging in areas. Those things would be in addition to what's getting done in the old classroom area. And then ADA, we still need to deal with getting people up to that, at least the plaza on the, I guess it's the east side of the building and then into the building. In this case, you probably could do a lift. We talked about that a little bit earlier. You could probably get away with a little vertical lift there as opposed to a ramp. Don't know how much more money you would save, but I mean, that deals with some of that. A toilet facility just on the main floor, because we would just consider making the floor where the offices would be, where the boardroom is now, I guess, where you wouldn't come in the main entry, you'd come in on a side entry if you were in a wheelchair.
David, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a lift already in the building, or does it not access all of the floors? It's just not functional?
There was an ancient lift at the point where the stairs were, where you would come in the main entrance. The balustrade at the top, you actually could open it out, and there was a pillar that went straight down, and there was a kind of it's like being on a forklift practically. It wasn't a modern enclosed lift by any means. It wasn't in accordance with modern standards. I think, Mike, didn't we take that out?
No, it's acting as a closet.
Okay.
There's no elevator company that will touch it. None.
Okay.
And it wasn't big enough for a wheelchair anyway. It was just like a person standing
Wow.
to get in it. So, but we could consider a lift inside in the place of that. They could do one of these limited use, limited access elevators. But I think in this case, the ramp was a cheaper solution on the outside.
All right, thank you. Other questions? All right, so it's not wildly out in the stratosphere where at least yes, Chris.
Sorry. So you're showing us the details on the building interior, but you had a third category of mechanical, et cetera, where I think the ventilation would have been covered. You have any detail breakout for that? Did I miss that?
Yeah, that's right here.
So ventilation.
So the ventilation and mechanical fresh air is the 1.5 million number that's in there. That's the big number for the whole building. But then there's also ventilation for the ECP classrooms and the OTPT area, which is on the other side of the building, mechanical exhaust. So you can see everything that's in there in that additional scope. So we'll send this up to the district and you can distribute it so you can take a look at it.
Thank you.
Ashley.
Thank you. I don't recall, could any of this covered by the EPC, specifically the ventilation items?
No, the boilers would be covered because I think they covered boilers in there. There's a couple of very small items may be covered by the EPC, but not the ventilation items because they actually cause you to use more energy rather than less energy because now they're bringing in fresh air and you have to heat and cool that. So.
Got it. Okay. And then my second question is the pool area, the metal framework with the slab on top. Wouldn't it be cheaper to just fill that up with concrete? I'm just curious.
It would. I don't know if it would be cheaper. It's such a large volume, and you'd have to do it over a very long period of time. It would never cure. You'd have to go through a process of either introducing refrigerant piping into it to allow it to, cure at a level rate. Otherwise, if you just let it cure on its own, it'll never get there. You can't just fill it. You do it in so many lifts, it would take so long. I think it would just get very expensive. You could fill it with dirt, compact it, and then pour a slab. Dirt's, not cheap either. So.
And the concern would then be settlement. If that dirt settled over time, then the slab would start to crack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what's the lifespan we can expect out of that metal frame with the slab on top?
It would be is like a regular building. It would be, I don't know, 100
50
years.
50 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I wasn't sure if that metal would corrode over time or something, and then we'd have to replace it and all that.
No, there shouldn't be any issue with corrosion in there. I mean, we would consider, venting just so there's air circulation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you.
Sorry. So sorry. I'm looking at the information we were given for the building and the EPC things that were listed. BCS 92, provide a full DDC control system in the building, blah, blah, blah. That's not included here under those 400.
Well, that's included under the fresh air line items that are in here.
400,000, right. So at the time you said 250,000 of that could be covered by the EPC.
Some of it could be, but the timing would be very, very tricky.
Okay.
But when we put a new piece of equipment in, we're going to make that piece of equipment DDC. So it probably doesn't make sense to try and then wait for the energy performance contract to connect that all together. I mean, we could look at that if the timing worked out, but it's already included in here.
Thank you.
Okay. So now, stop sharing. And we'll go back to me sharing. And it was this guy, I think. And a couple of things have come up. There were a couple of queries. One was How about grant money? Since we have this building that's over 100 years old, and there was a $600,000 grant given to the town of Greenburgh for the historic Rochambeau House. And so I contacted Garrett Duquesne to see how it's done. And let me see if I can just scroll through a little bit of stuff that I've gotten. Great. See, there are a couple of award booklets. I'll skip that. Here we go. Okay, so this is the Odell House from it was General Rochambeau, the French general's Revolutionary War headquarters, and they planned the Battle of Yorktown from here, and we ended up winning the Revolutionary War.
Nice.
And it's just up the street from where I live, and
Wow.
it's fallen on hard times. The Sons of the American Revolution held it for a long time after the Odell family no longer had it. The town took it over, and then the town applied for a grant. And there's a newspaper article if anybody wants to read through it about how in 2019 it's a matching grant. So you have to provide twice as the project has to be for twice as much as they'll match. And there's an amount that they match that they determine each year in each category of these consolidated grants. Historical grants that year, the maximum was $600,000. A year following that, it was $500,000. And I think there was one year when they didn't have the grant at all because of COVID. But so in about January or February of the year, they'll come out with their memo that says, here's the maximum amount for each category. And then the advice that I've gotten from Garrett is, if you're on the historical registry at the national or state level, you're much more likely to get this grant. And if I go and look at the website for that, okay, so here first, before I go any further, right, there's a nice catalog, and I've included the catalog on Google Docs if you're interested in it. And we have our own little page, and it tells a little bit of information about each grant. The award amount in this case, this is $600,000. Anticipated completion date. They give you they monitor your status as to how quickly you've completed the project, and so they're expecting to be done in 2024, and they're in a green status because they're on schedule. There's Garrett giving me his catalog, the catalog that shows all the grants, and then. So I have these attachments on Google Drive. You can look at them if it interests you, because there are a lot of a wide variety of projects. And then the real question is, I think Mike has brought this up as a concern. If you are a private individual and you get yourself onto this national registry, then you can do anything you want to your property, subdivide it, do any kind of project you want, as long as you don't use any federal or state money. If you use federal or state money, then the National Historical Register folks will look at your project and make sure that whatever it is you're doing to the facility, it makes it look like it was originally. So then your target is, I want it to look like it did in 1907, okay? It may not have to be like that under the surface, but everything that's visible to people should be like that. And so that is a question. And of course, there's a cost associated with that. And my question for BBS Architects is, let's say we're going to continue to do upkeep on this mansion in years to come. Are we better off applying for something in which we get a maximum, let's say $500,000 grant of matching funding, or are we better off sticking with private funding? That's my question to you. Katie, you have a question?
Oh, sorry, I may have raised my hand too early. I'll let you finish and let him answer.
Okay.
So the advice
Um,
that we typically would give to a school district or a private owner, or township, municipality regarding requesting historic status is that it creates a number of issues and a number of restrictions on that building. So as you said, everything would have to be time specific, era specific. So we're now replacing the roof with shingle roof. It would probably not allow that if you had historical status on that building. You would probably have to go back with a slate roof. That's probably what they would require you to do, which would cost 2 to 3 times the cost of putting a shingle roof back. We do have to
2
go
times you
through.
come out even, and 3 times you wouldn't. Okay.
Yeah, anything, windows, masonry, doors, anything that you touch on the outside of the building, railings, you name it, you're now going to have to go back in the period from which that came from, and you're going to have to restore it to that period. So it becomes very, very expensive in order to be able to do that. So I would just be careful with trying to declare it. It will cost you a lot more money in the long run, I think, in order to fix that up. If you really want to spend a lot of money on the outside of that building, you're going to end up spending a lot more money than you would have ordinarily. We still have to go through Office of Historic Preservation in the State Education Department, which we did when we filed for the roof replacement, and they okayed the switch to asphalt shingle because the asphalt shingle does have a slate look to it. So they okayed that. But
Okay.
if you got historic, on that building, I don't believe that they would allow you to do something like that. I think they would make you go back with the slate. Jim, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, that's kind of where I was gonna go, Fred. It would definitely be a much more difficult process in getting any of the work approved. There'd be a lot more oversight on their part, not just in the plan approval, but on the subsequent follow through, making sure everything was, once installed, that it, was done correctly. Which isn't a bad thing, but it just adds time and cost to a lot of these projects. And, once you do get it on the, historic register, you can't take it off. It's there basically in the, on their records until it burns down or is demolished.
Right.
So
And I don't-
where you
it-
would get money through grants, you would be probably making up the difference only in the added cost of what you would have been paying to the beginning. So
At
it was
best, if I get
a
awarded the
$300,000
grant.
project, initially it becomes 600,000, but then you get 300,000 back, you're still at $300,000.
All right.
And, I would be concerned about the interior of that building. I mean, it has been turned into a school, and schools need data wiring and fire alarm cabling and power wiring. And in a building that old that has all plaster ceilings and walls, the only place to run that is on the surface. And that's what's been done in that building over the years. I'm not sure if it was on historical register and we went to renovate the inside of that building. I honestly don't know what they would require the school district to do. I don't know. I would be very careful and give that a lot of thought before you apply for that.
What
What they would make you do typically is they would designate 2 or 3 specific areas of the building that really told the story of the building. The main lobby, your entryway is always one of their focal points. We run into that with a lot of our schools that are, built in the 1940s, that WPA era, and we really need to focus on what we touch in those spaces, the woodwork, the doors, the trim, everything. And then probably like the boardroom, that would be a huge space. But once once that back area where that pool is, that's beautiful. That is like one of the most stunning spaces I've ever seen in an old private home. But what's been done to it, there's no bringing it back.
Right.
So
It'd be
you
very
might
costly to
forced-
bring it back to
Your hand
where
may be
it was.
forced.
Yes. Okay. Understood.
And then if you want to add air conditioning to your building and ventilation, there's things we need to do that it might not be pretty sometimes. Just because it's an old house and you're trying to run ductwork and hide it and conceal it, you still got to cut vents into side of walls somewhere that didn't exist. So when you want to add the fresh air and you want to add the air conditioning, yeah, that's a needed thing, but that home never had it and it would never look like
The
it would
same.
have looked in 1907 if you start adding those things now.
Okay. Katie,
Yeah, right prior, I was gonna ask that, and now you've all said it. I'm just really surprised that we're having this conversation again. I clearly remember being told, seeing this at a board meeting, probably in spring of 2020. You guys decided on the asphalt roof. Then and there, we were told you can't get historic preservation. So I really wish we could focus our conversation on the future. So, and not go around and repeat this. It's
Well, it's not that
frustrating.
you can't get historic preservation. You can. It's whether you want to, because the grants would afford you to do more things. I think that's why the conversation was restarted.
All right. So shall we move on then? All right, so let's see if the next item is also backward looking. Just a second, I need to look at potential ECP 3-year-old funding, budget, federal budget reconciliation, build back better. Just a second. Phase 1, sample ECP. There we go. So, somewhere along the line of at the point at which the mansion was evacuated, is the point in time at which we also stopped serving 3-year-olds in our ECP program. We served, we weren't able to have the little half-day program anymore and have the funding continue as it had been. And so then we discontinued all the 3-year-olds and served a slightly greater number of 4-year-olds. The idea now is, gosh, if an early childhood program like a Head Start program is good for you, it's probably good for you for 3-year-olds as well as 4-year-olds. And if we wanted to restore some of that, where do we get the funding? And there is the Build Back Better bill is happening at the federal level. Was started out as a $3.5 trillion bill, and now it's down to about 1.75. And they've cut things in order to try and get, I guess, members of Congress to vote for it. And they've cut many of the programs, some of the environmental provisions. But the one thing that they don't appear to have cut up to this point is the universal pre-K funding. And what happens is if this thing goes through, then states will be allowed to opt in to this universal pre-K funding in addition to the existing funding programs that we have. And then what will happen is I believe there will be allocations, and some of it will be based on your free and reduced lunch numbers, and you'll have some funding during the first couple of years. The funding will be completely covered by the federal government, and then it will begin to be cut back in 10% increments, and the state is expected to pick up the remaining amount, or at least that's how the legislation is written. It can be used by private entities in addition to public entities. However, there are Head Start standards as opposed to simple daycare. So there are educational requirements, minimum requirements built into this. So if anybody wants to look at this, this is, I think, going to be more in the purview of the Education Committee side. But if the question arose, okay, you're going to try and put these ECP classrooms back into place, and you're gonna try and start up this 3-year-old program, where does the money come from? This is a possibility for funding it. So I just wanted to provide that for people to look at their leisure, and we can certainly send it off to other committees, assuming that it passes at the federal level. But that's ongoing. That's happening right now. So I'm personally keeping my fingers crossed because that's an educational thing. Any questions or comments on this? Ashley Pineda.
Thank you. I do have a comment. I have a few comments, actually. The first one is, if it passes, where would we put those kids, right? We don't have space as it is now. At least we won't have space for a while, even if we did the full ECP. If we fixed the mansion and did all that, it's going to be a while before that happens. So I don't see where we would put those kids. That's the first thing. But the second thing, I see the value in having that program for the 3-year-olds. But at the same time, I think we're so spread thin right now, and there's so many other things on our plate that I almost feel like we should be taking that energy and just kind of applying it more on the things that we already have, and potentially consider the 3-year-old program in a future place when some things are a little bit more settled. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? All right, hearing none. 8:44, okay. We're coming towards the end of our agenda. Next step on phase 2. We've had ongoing discussions that we should, so we have a phase 1 at this point that's well on its way to being submitted to NYSED. The next thing down the line is phase 2. We had talked about having another set of items that were around the $5 or $6 million level, and I believe some items were brought up. And then there were the ideas that we should become more ambitious with our phase 2, and to that. From my perspective, and this is just if Dave ruled the world, I see that there are a lot of roofs that need to be fixed. My feeling is that phase 1, a lot of phase 1 was about getting mechanical ventilation into place. And a lot of phase 2 could go to what we had been concentrating on before, which was building envelopes before COVID hit. And so my thoughts were that, let's see, the advice I've been given is don't try to do this yourself. But I tried to put out a very, very rough estimate. I understand BBS would have to come up with final numbers. I did take the liberty of selecting some items because I think in coming up with the actual numbers, you need to figure out generally kind of how big a bond will the traffic bear. We have to have some idea of that, and we have to give you some ideas of what are the most important things. What are your priorities? So my thinking is BBS has to look at phase 2 and determine whether it needs to be a more ambitious project. The priorities, as I have understood it from the last several meetings that we've had, is first ventilation, second building envelopes, anything that's found in the building envelopes in priority 1 or 2, roofs and exterior walls. And you fill beyond that with anything that's a priority 1 item. Some of those will be things that you have to do, or your project won't get approved, certain high level safety items, and then anything else that you have put together at about priority 1. If I look and say I want to do something significant to several roofs, and I just put a straw man number in for the mansion. I didn't know what it was. I went through and said, okay, I have some people who want to increase the number of ECP classrooms, and the most popular idea for that was the adding a wing onto Lee F. Jackson. And we had, I think, 3 different options. And the cheapest of those 3 options was 4 classrooms for $7 million. So I kind of put that in there. We can discuss, where does ECP go? What is the amount that we are willing to spend? Lee F. Jackson has an entire roof replacement project. We could do that entire item from the BCS. Highview Phase one has part of the roof being replaced. The entire thing was, I think, was larger than this. The balance of the Highview roof was about $2 million. RJ Bailey, if you've looked in the auditorium, as you may remember from touring, that half the seats are not half, but a large percentage of the seats are no longer good, and we put off fixing that because the roof leaks. So if you put together what the costs of fixing the roof and the auditorium, that runs about 1.3 million, and then the auditorium would be back in shape and there'd be fewer leaks. You could go look and say, well, maybe we need to do some masonry work in addition to that, but it's a start. Woodlands Middle High School, it's like $4.3 million for the roofs. So maybe we could do half of it. I don't know, if it fits neatly to an exact 2 million or what it would actually be. And then I filled in a number for mechanical ventilation, and you can put in real numbers instead of my fake numbers. I came up with a total of about 18 million. I thought, okay, if it turns out to be within the boundaries of about 20 million, when you do the actual numbers and the real costs, what you really would think, and then some of the money gets taken care of by funding that we build up in our reserves, then the actual bond would be for less than 20 million, but I'm not quite sure how much. And that's a kind of a stab in the dark as to how we might spend our money in very generic terms.
So David, let me tell you that Dr. Iverson, Dr. Macaluso, and I have been talking about this. And we were going to meet with Mike Falcone and then pull in Jim and Fred to come up with a proposal to the committee. Because instead of doing piecemeal, our philosophy was, let's get all of the ventilation, let's get all of the roofs, let's get the ECP wing done and put it into one project. Hopefully the capital reserve will pass, that we can offset the project with that. And then we were going to come back to the committee with a project that we were going to propose on what we could see with the help of our architects.
And were you thinking that you were going to spread it out and do a little bit for each school the way it's done here?
So what we were thinking of was between phase one and between the CRISA and the American Rescue Plan grants, whatever wasn't included, we would complete the ventilation, complete the roofs, because here's my philosophy, and Jim and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong. If you're going to replace half of a roof and not the other half, the timing difference is going to become difficult with warranty. So my thought was, let's get all of the roofs done. Let's get all of the ventilation done. Let's get this addition put on to LFJ for ECP so that we could have house all of our students in one area and possibly use the ECP building for the 3-year-old program. Instead of piecemealing, get all of this done in one project, and then we could move on to what else was in the building condition survey.
Okay, Ashley?
Thank you. Ms. Raymond, I do have a question. I apologize. I keep forgetting how this works. So we do some work in phase one, as an example, ventilation, all that stuff. The funding that is available for that, does that mean we get reimbursed after the fact with that funding that can cover that ventilation as well?
So the ventilation that is right now is in phase one. We already have the money for that. We put some of the ventilation in the CRISA grant and the American Rescue Plan grant. That you have to spend it in order to get it. So yeah, we would pay for it, but then we would apply for the state and they would give us the money.
Okay, so then that money would be back in our pocket to be used for the future for something else.
It could be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other comments?
So you know what, David, and just as a sidebar, our whole idea was, instead of piecemealing a little here, a little there, a little, let's just get one area completely done. Whether it be the roofs across the district, Let's just get it done instead of a half a roof here, a quarter of a roof there, that kind of thing. Let's just do the whole thing. Let's take an area and just get it done.
Okay.
We were thinking, we were thinking if we could do that, then we can use that area. Piecemealing, we're getting little pieces done here and there, but we still aren't able to probably use any of those areas because it's piecemealed. That's how we were thinking, correct, Lisa?
Okay, so the biggest pole in the tent at that point would be the Woodlands Middle High School roof, which is, I think, $4.3 million as opposed to $2 million that I have here.
Correct.
Which would kick the thing up to about 20.
Correct.
Chris.
I'm going to defer to Katie. She had her hand up before I did.
Okay, Katie.
I don't think so, Chris, but thanks. And I may have lost my thought. Well, one thought was, I'm not sure. Oh, I know what it was to Ms. Raymond and Dr. Iverson. How soon do you think you can put together this proposal?
Well, I think, and Dr. Iverson, excuse me if I'm speaking over you, but I think Dr. Iverson, Dr. Macaluso and I have been talking, and we have a general plan. We want to meet with Fred and Jim to come up with a grander plan and include Mike, obviously, that we can propose to the committee, because they have to design it. They have to give us the cost. We have to present it to you. Then we have to present it to the public, go for a vote, etc. So it's not something that we're thinking that we want to wait on. We've been talking about it. We've been thinking about it. And again, there's a lot that has to be done, but we're thinking if we can do these building envelope things, it will preserve our buildings, because you got to remember, when we have these massive rains like we just did this week, or snow, it is affecting our buildings because it's coming in through the roofs. Let's preserve this so that we can stabilize that, make sure it's okay, so that the inside is preserved, so that we can do the future work inside.
Very good. Chris.
Okay, so actually, my point is very similar to Katie's, and I have a few points, so bear with me. One, I really appreciate the fact that we're looking at the envelope overall and doing it wholesale. I think that's the right way to move. I think the building block for some of these decisions really needs to be basically for at least the committee and possibly the board to understand, is that spreadsheet that you're working on, so that we can understand what's already been done, what did we have under the phase 1 and EPC that's now moved out, so that we can get a clear picture of what's already happening, how it's funded, and then what's left.
Yep.
So that's the starting point. Now I'm going to move to the end point of a potential vote. What are our timeframes if we want to try to build in a bond request for May, or are we already behind the ball on that one?
Okay, so we are at square one. December 14th is our target date. We have to get a capital reserve established. Okay. In the meantime, if the committee, if Dr. Iverson and the board want to proceed with a referendum for May, we got to start working now, because you got to remember there are time constraints. There are times. So there are SED requirements. You got to advertise 45 days before you have the vote. You have to have 3 publications. So there are timelines that we're working on, and I'm not sure, Fred, Jim, you could weigh in on this. I'm not sure we could get anything done for a referendum with the May vote. We'd be tying it really, really close, but we'd have to start working really hard now to get it done.
Would we be able to get an outline, a timeline of a possible vote even prior to our November, when's our meeting, November 17th, or at the November 17th meeting?
Oh yeah, we could probably put something together, but again, it's if we're gonna do it, we can't, and for lack of a better wording or phrasing, we can't stall. If we're gonna do this, We got to tell Jim and Fred that we want to do this. They've got to come up with numbers for us. You know, whoever, Ivy, our district clerk, you know, she's got to have the deadlines for advertising so that we can get it along with our May vote.
And the
Right.
public hearings and all that. So it may not happen, but if we at least move forward, we're not going to regret moving slowly. So,
Right, and even if it doesn't happen with our May vote, Chris, it very well could be that we have to have a separate election, that we could
Yeah.
have one in August, September, October to move forward.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, is you're probably better off, planning it out properly, giving yourself the time, and then, there's a lot that's on everyone's plate come May. It
Right.
just may be, having things in good order, and then you start get the word out as to what's going on.
I
'Cause
don't-
the minute you try to cram this down, the
Right.
public's throat, they're gonna react.
I
Agreed,
don't
agreed, I
think,
agree.
I don't think we have to concentrate on May as being our vote. Let's do it the right way. Let's follow whatever our timeline and our procedure is. And even if we have to have a vote in September, October, so be it. It doesn't matter. We could still have it and it will proceed the progress, because if we miss the May deadline and you wanted to wait till the next May, think about that. That is 2023.
Yes.
Kind of
So-
too long to wait.
but are we also talking about at the May vote time? Then if we have luck in December 14th and we're able to create the capital reserve fund, are we not going to include a referendum on the May vote to fund the capital reserve? Yeah.
No, nope. You know, you're right, Chris. We could in May have a referendum to keep funding the capital reserve.
Okay, yes.
But it's that we have to have BBS and the district on the same, in the same time frame or in the same mindset, that we can get a project together that we can ask the taxpayers to use that money.
And then we can pull it out later, right? You voted
Correct.
in, you voted
Correct.
back out. Carol
Correct.
Allen.
Right.
Carol.
I would like to suggest that we stop discussing this and give the superintendent and her staff time to come up with the proposal that they wish to present to us.
Okay. Provide proposal. Dave.
Well, Carol said the correct thing, that we should just see what's being presented for this scope of work, because we have phase 1, phase 2 already laid out. It's something that was discussed at many, many meetings. I was curious, what's the scheduled completion for phase 1 scope? Are we looking at 2 years for phase 1, meaning that
Nope.
May
Nope.
and November vote
So,
becomes feasible and becomes well in time with that? Or is phase 1 going to be delayed because we have to move money around?
nope. So one would roll into another, hopefully. That would be the progression. Jim was at the district today to look at roofs with one of his colleagues and handed me paperwork that I will get trustee Mayers as president to sign and Dr. Iverson to sign, get it back to BBS so that they can send it to SED so we can start the progression to get approval so we can start phase 1. So usually what happens is, in a perfect world, phase 1 will start. Phase 1 will go through all the steps that we have to do. But in the meantime, we're working on phase 2, and one will just roll into another.
So actual construction on phase 1 ideally would happen this coming summer, correct?
That's the
Right.
progression that we're working on, correct?
Other
And completion of,
Okay, go ahead.
I was just wondering, completion of phase 1 items, is that for next year, or so that we will be
Well,
ready to act?
We're hoping that because Jim and Fred and their colleagues have put the paperwork together, we'll get the signatures. I'll get it back to BBS. They'll get it to SED, State Education Department, Facilities Planning. They'll review it. They'll come back to BBS with questions. They'll answer the questions. Hopefully we'll get it approved. And that then we can go out to bid. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fred and Jim. Hopefully in the spring for it to begin, work to begin in the summer.
We would start the work, targeting starting all the work in June, since a lot of this stuff involves a lot of internal things and you can't do a lot of the work when school's occupied. And every project that was in phase one is being designed. It's not like we're doing phase one in pieces. It's all the work, all the 5 point whatever million is
5.1,
in
yeah.
design. And then it will be in construction. Some things, because of supply shortages, may run through June into September, October, maybe even November if we get, caught up in the way things are going now. But everything will be in construction, awarded, and should be 100% complete and closed out, I would imagine, by at the very latest, November, this time next year.
Mhm.
Carol,
Sorry, I had not put my hand down, sorry.
oh, okay. All right, then. Are there any other questions or comments? I think the comment that said, let's get the administration to put their heads together and give us a somewhat refined proposal forthwith is a very good one. So that concludes everything that I have for tonight. We come now to other concerns. Does anyone want to raise any other concerns? Hearing none. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
9:04 p.m. Thank you very much for participating. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday, November 17th.